Well, hello, my alternative venues for jazz people. Thank you for coming on to see and listen to and chat with Attorney James Walker Jr. I am really honored that he agreed to do this show with us. And as I said to him earlier before we went on, that one of the reasons that I asked him to come on was because he was talking about a case that he had just settled where he was able to settle a case with a composer who whose music had been infringed by an R&B artist. And in so talking about it, he mentioned that he had freed several artists, including jazz artists, from unfair contracts. So thank you so much, Attorney Walker, for coming on. I am so honored to have you here.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I love the work you're doing. I love your audience, and very proud to see an entertainment lawyer doing some great work like this.
Thank you, even if it's not in the field of law. Although I will say I do still practice a little bit. I'm an executor for the estate for a couple of legendary jazz musicians. And I do a little bit of work. You know, I can't get out of it completely, otherwise I would completely waste that education. But thank you for coming. I want you to talk about, before we get into anything, I want you to talk about your greatest accomplishment, which is what you said in your bio, and that is your four children and what they are doing. I'm very proud. I know every chance I get to brag on my son, I do. And so I want you to just take a few minutes to brag on your children and tell us who they are and what they're doing.
I'm honored to talk about them. We have four children, 28, 26, 23, and 18. After now we're
Okay.
the
You
ages.
took a break.
They're just phenomenal. Two are becoming lawyers. One is a lawyer already at Paul Weiss, my son James. His sister Joy just started law school at Howard, our alma mater. Her mom, James, myself, we all went there. And my oldest daughter Jordan is a realtor in DC, and my youngest son plays baseball down in Tampa. So
That's
they're
that's
all
incredible.
really
I
doing
just really
well.
wanted the world to know that this is just an incredible family, and I think you're trying to build a bit of a dynasty.
I'm
It's going to
trying
be Walker,
to
Walker, and Walker at some point.
something if they come back home. He's
That's
in New
great.
York now, but hopefully one day he'll come back and bless us
Can,
with his presence.
can you tell me a little bit about even if you don't talk about that case in particular, I was really intrigued by the fact that and I like that you say you freed people from the contracts, because I used to tell people that getting out of one contract and going to another was like leaving one plantation and going to another one during slavery. It's not like you were going to Canada, you know.
It really
And
is.
so when I saw that you said you freed them, I was very interested in that. And can you tell me what the process is for doing that and what is an unfair contract?
No,
And what
I will tell you. Typically, I get a call from LA to Detroit, New York, Atlanta, of course, where I'm based. I'll get a call at least once or twice a week with someone saying, "Hey, read an article. I saw you did this case over here, blah, blah, blah. I've been in a bad contract for X number of years. I was at a restaurant last night and a rap artist walked up to me and said he was in a bad contract with Universal. And typically we get a copy of the contract. Never fail. We find something that the label hasn't done that they promised to do. And that's kind of where you start at. You kind of start looking at, did they keep their word to the artist? I'm trying to bring a little light closer. Is it bright enough for you?
Yes, it's,
Bright
it's
enough?
much better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I basically try to make sure that the label's not in breach. And if they
Okay.
are in breach, then we're going to have an issue. And we're going to typically send them the letter, put them on notice. And usually it ends up with the label saying, you know what? We don't want to fight this. How do
Okay.
we get out of this? Can we give them back their masters? Can they pay this much money? Can they do this? Can we work something out? And we've been out here now about 25 years. And I would say, yeah, not uncommon for us to do 10 or 15 artists a year. And that's how
Wow.
you get up to 300 artists very quickly when you run the math.
Sure. Yeah, I think you've done like 250. And I just saw where Anita Baker was able to get her masters back.
She sure
So
was.
I was
She sure
applauding that.
was.
That's the whole thing to me. It feels like if you can own your own masters, you can become the captain of your own ship. And so especially in jazz, which is a very is sort of a subgenre of music in terms of the music industry, but in
You
terms
know
of
what's
my field, it's
fascinating?
primary.
You know what's fascinating to me about jazz is that I was watching the Billie Holiday story with Audrey
Mm,
Day on Hulu the other day, and I just thought like this lady was born in 1915. She died around 1959. Here we are, over 100 years after her birth,
yes,
and we're still singing "Ain't Nobody Business If I Do." We're still
that's right.
singing, of course, "Strange Fruit" and all the classic songs that we've loved for decades. And I just don't feel jazz gets the respect that it's due.
You are
Really,
absolutely
really
right.
appreciate Billie Holiday from 1950 to
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
1950s. And this music today with samples and hooks and all kind of technology
Yeah.
it's not Billie Holiday. It's
No,
not that
I
exact.
just had Adrian Young and Ali Shaheed Muhammad on yesterday or day before, and they were talking about how so much of the new music doesn't have bass lines, doesn't have anything to like catch you to be catchy. And jazz musicians, that's all we do. I mean, we are telling a story, whether it's a vocalist or instrumentalist, and those stories last.
No, no, jazz music is telling a story, and jazz musicians they know charting. When you pull that sheet music out and you say, "Hey, we're gonna bump up a half step. We're gonna change
Yes,
keys at the 30-second bar," and they can go right in there. Frank Sinatra was amazed at how Quincy Jones could go right in there and change his music right on the spot, right all the different parts.
yes.
And I
And
have,
he could do it without hearing it. Like he could do it straight from looking at the sheet music that something would
yeah,
or would not work.
yeah, and that's to me that's music. I'm a musician. I play piano, I play trumpet, I play drums, and I just appreciate music and
So what can we do, Attorney Walker? What can we do to get jazz music, which is Black American music, back in front of a larger group of people? If I say that we can sell out 750 seats, 1,000 seats, that's great. That would be nothing for some of the R&B artists.
I think you know what I think. I believe it would take someone on the mainstream side
Yes.
to pull this generation into it's cool. You know what I mean? I think
Yes.
somehow when you see Little Nas X, a rapper, go over and do a country music song, it goes platinum.
Uh-huh.
He brought a whole group of people over there who never looked at country. On the gospel side, Israel brought a whole group of gospel folks into what's called Christian contemporary gospel music, white folks.
Okay.
And none of us was really doing that before Israel came along and got
Okay.
everybody singing, "I am a friend of God. He calls
Yeah.
me friend." Totally different than the Kirk Franklin sound, the
Yeah.
Heather Walker sound, the Yolanda Adams sound. So similar to those two genres, it would take someone to grab jazz music
Uh-huh.
and bring
Uh-huh.
it that way. I have a young jazz artist out of Birmingham, kind of favors Maxwell, plays sax like Grover Washington. He's 20 some years old, Alex Banks. And he's a young cat that I like because the young kids relate to him.
Okay.
He has an appreciation for all of the jazz legends and icons. But you need someone like that to come on the scene, I believe,
Yes.
and kind of, I don't want to say make it cool, but just make it relational.
Yeah, and there are jazz musicians, Robert Glasper, for example, who does some great work with people in the public. So I think that you're right, though. I would love to see somebody have an opening act and have that opening act be a young jazz group. So we'll talk about that later, maybe with my clients and yours, or people that I know and
As
you
well,
know,
yeah.
because that would be great.
Because, Quincy Jones always tells you hip hop is just jazz and bebop. He always says when he listens to hip hop, he thinks of jazz and bebop.
That's right. And they've gone through similar trajectories and struggles
Yeah.
and then success. And then, so it is very similar. It is. What was your impetus to go into law at the very beginning? What made you want to be a lawyer?
I don't know if you would consider her a jazz artist, but she did do some jazz riffs from time to time. But Phyllis Hyman was the
Hmm.
biggest impetus for me getting into entertainment law. She was an early acquaintance when I was still at the booking agent, concert promoter stage, pre-law
Okay.
school. And I met her at Blues Alley in DC and started promoting her shows and working with her team. She was one of the first people that said, "Hey, you need to look at entertainment law." I was thinking
Ah,
civil rights law, Thurgood Marshall, those kind of people, what Johnny Cochran did. I was thinking of that kind of fight. And I kind of bring that same energy to the music side. I
yeah.
look
I saw one of your videos where you say that what you have is a legal ministry. And
Right.
I liked that phrase. Tell me what that means to you.
It means when people come in, you just don't look at them as dollars and cents. You don't look at them as just an artist or a client or whatever. You look at it as like this kind of holistic way. This is their life, their
Mhm.
music, their artistry. It's something that's deeply, deeply holistic to them and from their core. So you have to handle it with certain sensitivities when you're dealing with artists. Whether my
Mhm.
clients are on TV, film, jazz, R&B, pop, whatever music, book authors, we have the whole gamut of creative minds and creative hearts.
Mhm.
So I have to be sensitive, almost like you do when you're in ministry. You know, people come from
Yes.
all walks of life, and you have to meet them where they are and make sure you're sensitive to their trajectory, sensitive to their story, sensitive to their financial situation. The
Mhm.
guy that I
Mhm.
represented in that her case that we settled, he couldn't afford a firm like ours. You
Okay.
know, if we just walked up on the street, you know, and said, "Hey, can you come in?" Because he just wouldn't be able to afford the kind of fees that a boutique entertainment litigation law firm does after 20 years. But when you see his heart and you see how pure Andre Sims is, you just want to help him, you know,
Okay.
and you just want to do the right thing and kind of help him. Um,
That's
that's
beautiful.
kind of how I define it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What do you think? Have you negotiated very many 360 deals?
Oh yeah,
And if you have, would you explain what a 360 deal is, how you feel about it?
sure. For your listeners, the 360 deal is the whole circle, as we like to say. It's your artist deal right here, your artist recording deal, your merchandising deal if you're selling merch, your booking contract, your film TV, your speaking engagements. If it's a 360 deal, the record label or the production company is trying to be a part of the whole circle. They're trying to take a part of the monies. They might
Mhm.
say, we want 10% of your merchandising. We want 15% of your booking income. We want 5 or 7 albums from you. We want your publishing if you're a songwriter. So at the end of the day, we call it 360 because they've covered everything in the galaxy. They try to get a piece of every single slice of your pie. And obviously, we as pro artist lawyers, we're trying not to do that. We're trying to carve
I
out.
was going to ask you, what's your opinion about that?
No, we're trying hard when we can to say, hey, keep what you can keep, your merchandise, your booking, because we see all kind of inherent conflicts of interest.
That's what I
You're
was
going to be
thinking.
my
I've always
label.
thought
You're
that.
going to be my manager. You're going to be my booking agent. You're going to take a piece of my touring. There's so much double dipping, and Boyd Records is going to get 10% of this,
Right.
20% of management commission, some royalty monies or some record sale monies, half of the publishing on the song ownership. You making more money than me at the end of the day if you get
That's
all these
right.
different checks. And
And
I'm
also, I also see where they often don't do any of the work in that particular branch. Like if they say they want to get 10% of the booking, but they don't do
they
any
don't do none of
booking,
the work. No, they don't do
then I
any of
don't
the
see
work.
why they should be able to get it. So
They don't
somebody
do
just
any work.
asked a question, does a
Okay.
new artist have to give up her publishing?
No, the Facebook user who said that, no, a new artist doesn't have to give up his or her publishing. Um, Typically, a label will try. I was doing a deal yesterday in London, and a label in London asked for half the publishing. It was the funniest thing with the European accent. The guy said, we want to take the publishing. We get the. And I'm like, boy, even overseas, over the pond, they're trying to take publishing. I
Even
thought this
over
was
there, they're trying to get
I
it.
thought this was an American phenomenon, but this
No.
brother was overseas, and he was like, "We want to get 40% of the song, the ownership, and da da da." But no, to answer his or her question, you don't have to give it up. Typically, when the advent of streaming came along, and we got rid of cassettes and 8 tracks and 78s and 45s and all that, record labels complained that okay, now because of streaming, because of the marketplace, we got to make money somehow. The internet
Uh-huh.
has diluted our value, it's diluted our money. So we got to take part in your publishing. We got to take part of your merchandising, part of your touring. They made up all these excuses to try to dig their hands further into the pie. And
Uh-huh.
I tell the
Uh-huh.
smart
Uh-huh.
songwriter all of the time, no, please don't give up your
You
publishing.
advise against that.
No, I tell listeners if you look at the Copyright Act, if a song is on an album that goes platinum and you're getting your copyright full 9 cents, 9.1 cents per CD sold, you're looking at $91,000
That's
for
right.
that one song. Now, when you get on digital streaming, Google Play has their amount, YouTube has their amount, but it's still a substantial amount if you're getting, say, like
All of it. Yeah.
Focus Song has 350 million downloads. That's some serious money.
That's right. That's right. Um, So I wanted to ask you about streaming. We talked about it a little bit off camera. And if you have a significant number of streams, I think you thought it was worth it, right?
People think that, but you got to have like Beyonce streams to really make streaming worth it. If you got a million streams, you're not making
You're
no
not making any.
like $20.
And most
Yeah,
jazz artists don't even get a million.
yeah.
As I was saying to you, some of them will put on Facebook and brag that they got 50,000 streams. And I'm like, that's no money.
I think the key with streaming is using it to push other things. Like if you see you got a million streams and you're able to look at the demographics and see, okay, 500,000 are streaming in New York,
Right,
or 50,000 are streaming in Georgia, then that should tell you as an artist, I need to be in that market performing.
right,
There's
right,
someone in
right.
that market that loves me. If I got a 500,000 streams,
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing that streaming does is it gives you a base to pivot from to set up your performances and your
Almost to use it then as part of your publicity.
correct,
That, yeah, you can
correct,
hear the music and then maybe you'll want me to come to your town.
exactly,
You,
and build it up to the point where you know who these people are and you're getting them to follow you on social media, so that
hmm.
then when you release something, you can say, okay, I'm going to release this single tonight. I've got a million followers. If 50,000 spend $1,
Right,
buy
right.
buy something on Apple iTunes, I've got 50,000 coming in. And I've
That,
had smart clients who kind of try to use that math. Like I'm
hmm.
going to strategically print a CD and move 10,000. And if I
Hmm.
can get $10 a pop, I've made decent money off
I
my
made some
10,000
money.
CDs. That's how
That's
they do it.
that's smart way to look at it. Do you remember the book This Business of Music by Krasilovsky?
Sure, he was my mentor.
Because you wrote This Business of Urban Music, right?
Correct. Yep. At Bill Kraslowski's suggestion. He was
That, oh,
yelling.
really? Did he?
Yeah, he brokered my whole deal. I got that deal because Bill called Random House Billboard Music and asked them to let me write his book, but an urban twist on it.
Wow. Okay.
We're
You know,
probably,
when you said that, when I read This Business of Urban Music, I wondered about that. So
yeah.
that's good to know that he was your
And
mentor and actually guided you through that.
I knew Bill when I was in law school. I met Bill Kraslowski in 1993 or 4. I was doing moot court, and I was arguing a case in New York at Cardozo Law School.
Uh-huh.
And we stayed in the city, and I went by his office, walked in, introduced myself, and he was like, "You're at Howard University." Oh, yeah, I know that school. We had a Fats Waller Jazz Scholarship there or something.
Uh-huh.
He
Uh-huh.
administered it for the estate like you do. So
Yes.
he knew Howard very well. He was mixed about our school. He had some clashes with some of our teachers, so it was always a funny story whenever I said I went to Howard. But he asked me to spell synchronization. He said,
Uh-huh.
"What are synchronization rights?" And I raised it for your listeners. And I spelled it SYNCHRO, blah, blah, blah. And he said, "Sit down." He said, "When you learn what a synchronization license is and a mechanical license is, then you'll be a real entertainment lawyer." And
Uh-huh.
5 years later, I had done at least 3,000.
Wait, 5 years later you had done 3,000?
Yeah, because it was to a point where we had 30 gospel writers that we represented, and each
Okay.
writer was licensing Through the Storm by Yolanda Adams, All
Yes.
Belongs to God by Hezekiah Walker, some stuff by Fred Hammond, some stuff by Kurt Franklin. We were administering for so many writers that we
Uh-huh.
were constantly sending out mechanical licenses. And for your listeners, a mechanical license back in the day, when you print up a CD, you have to issue a mechanical license. It's a
Right.
contract that basically gives the record label permission to use that song, and they're
Right.
going to pay you the 9 cents per copy when that CD sells. So we had 30 plus writers. So we were cranking out licenses all day, all night. We had 2 girls who did nothing but mechanical licenses.
Wow.
Gina and Gina, China Smith and Gina Ryan. They did licenses for about good 3 or 4 years when I was in Wallingford, Connecticut.
That's great.
Still, every now and then, I don't do as much as I used to. Now
Uh-huh.
I partner with administration companies.
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
company in
Yes.
Atlanta that
Yes.
does that full time. So when I
Hmm.
get a writer who comes in and says, "Hey, I want you to handle the administration of my catalog, the issuance
Yes.
of contracts and licenses," I'll call the Mezzo agency and we'll share in the work
Yes.
and in
Yes.
the
Yes.
income to do that work. But Bill Krasowski taught me the word mechanical license when I was in law school.
That
And there's a
was a lesson well learned.
yes, to understand copyright law and how you have to license for your listeners the copyright. When somebody uses your song, film, your TV thing, you have to license it. Mechanical for CD, synchronization license when it's in a it's in a movie or film.
That's right.
When we say sync, we say synchronization because we're synchronizing music. I'm looking at your list here of names like they can see me. Um,
Yes, they
synchronizing,
can.
you're synchronizing music to film and TV. That's why we
Mhm,
call it
mhm,
synchronization
mhm.
rights, because it's
That's
music.
right. And that can be quite lucrative, even for jazz musicians. When some of their
Mhm.
music ends up in movies, that's when they can make some money.
Right.
And a lot of movies will use jazz, so that is a part that I work in as well.
Who
It's
would be our modern day Billie Holiday on the jazz side? Do we have one, or is black
Well,
music still
okay, if
the
you want to talk about some of our modern day vocalists, we have so many who are just great. Some of my favorites are Diane Reeves,
Oh yes,
Jasmine Horn,
yes.
Jean Baylor, who used to be, I don't know if you remember Jean Baylor when she and her partner were in Jeanne.
Oh yes, that's right. They were. Yeah.
Yes. So Jean Baylor is now working with her husband, and they have a group called the Baylor Project, and they just did an album that's incredible. And she has Diane Reeves, her, and Jasmine Horn scatting on one of the songs on that album, and it's incredible. Um, I have Brianna Thomas, who's another really good singer, and so you've got them carrying on the legacy. It's really a lot, and I'll
They,
turn you on to some of it at some point.
I would appreciate that. Here in Atlanta, we have Kathleen Bertrand.
I
Um,
know she did one of these AVJ talks.
yes, I do. I do a lot of legal work for Kathleen.
Oh, okay, yes, she's
So,
an AVJ
and then
person.
in Atlanta, I do a lot of work for Marcus Johnson, one of my fraternity brothers.
Uh-huh, I know
Yeah,
Marcus Johnson. I've hired him
he's a
a few
great guy.
times. Oh, that's great. Um, I wanted to ask you about, let me just see, it was something else. Oh, ownership of the masters. I've
Mm,
been encouraging all my clients to own their masters, and even if they raise their money elsewhere and do their own recording, in jazz, if you have a radio promotions person, a social media person, you have a marketing person that you can hire as freelancers, you are a label in essence, and then you're making more money than you would be going after a smaller record label. What do you think about artists owning their own masters?
I'm in 110% agreement with you. If you can pull it off, own it and just license it back to the distributor.
That's what I recommend.
Keep 80%, give them 10 or 20%.
That's right.
But
That's
just
right.
understand, to your artists that are listening, if you're going to do that, you got to have some money to market it. I have a lot
Right.
of clients who have hot masters, wonderful music. We love the music, but they can't do anything with it because they don't have marketing money, or they don't have
That's right.
the team to execute getting the music out there. So you have to make sure you have that in place if you're going to decide to.
And I've seen that. I've seen people spend all their money doing the record and then not have any money to promote it. And then,
Right.
and then it doesn't make
Makes
any
no
sense
sense.
at
It
that
is
point.
funny when we look at hip hop, Master P, Dr. Dre, and these guys, regardless of if you like their music or not, you gotta like their business model. Like, these
Absolutely.
guys came to the industry when hip hop exploded in the 90s and said, wait, we're gonna sell out of our trunk and build
That's
our
right.
audience base. We're gonna go down to the record radio station and convince the guy to play our hip hop records, and we keep it
We're
80%,
keeping it. That's
if not
right.
more. So
That's right.
Universal and BMG and these companies, they had to come to these rappers and say, look, we want a piece of that. We
That's
just
right.
want to be in here with y'all. And the rapper said, okay, we'll let you in. You break us overseas in Europe. You help us get in different markets, get on radio. But we're only giving you 10 or 20%.
That's right.
And we
That's right.
definitely keeping our masters.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think that's really the future. That's the key. And to just go back to copyright for a minute, for the listeners, I see on Facebook so many times when you all will play someone else's music, and then you'll say on there, "I do not have the rights to this music." You're still violating somebody's copyright when you do that. And
yeah,
saying that you're not violating it doesn't mean that you're not.
yeah, I
So
never understood that when people do that. I see it all the
no,
time. Pastors will preach and they'll put music up and say, I don't own this music.
I don't own this music.
That doesn't, guys
Yeah,
like
you can
me,
still be in trouble.
yeah, you're still in trouble.
That is so. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about that too. Let me just see if there was anything I asked you about um, the fair contract. And right now, are people still retaining you to negotiate recording contracts for them? Is that
Oh, yeah.
okay?
But more to get them out of them. We sent 2 letters off today getting people out of bad debts.
out of those
Yeah,
contracts. What
exactly.
can you say if you had to give some advice, because we're at our last 5 minutes,
Sure.
if you had to give some advice to a young artist just getting started in this business, regardless of genre, what are the things that you most want them to pay attention to protect themselves so that they don't have to come to you 4 or 5 years later, not having made any money and asking you to get them out of the contract? What solid advice would you want to give them?
A young artist comes to me and they ask for solid advice and they're signing their first record deal. The first thing I would ask them is, how long do you want to be bound? How many albums do you want to do? Because this label is going to try to get 5+ albums out of you. If you don't
Right.
want to be here 10, 15, 20 years, keep it down to 1 or 2. I would also tell them, whatever you do, put some language in there that allows you to renegotiate if you hit certain thresholds.
Yes.
Then I don't care what the contract says. If I got language in it that says when I go platinum, we renegotiate,
Yes.
we renegotiate. So
Right. Because those are what we call happy problems.
Yeah, those are happy problems. I tell them, try to keep their publishing, try not to give up management, try not to give up merchandising. I try to tell them, do the research on the label. Make sure they have your genre down pat. Make sure they don't already have an R&B, pop queen, urban girl from the street, Mary J. Blige, just like you.
Right.
You know you ain't gonna get no attention.
That's right.
They
That's
have
right.
that.
That's right.
They try to get them to promote you, and they already got somebody like you.
They're not going to do it.
Going back to the Berry Gordy model, there was the Supremes, there was the Temptations, there was the Marvin Gaye solo act. Like every label has that model where you have one R&B act, one R&B female act, and you have the quartet. You got to make sure you come somewhere where they can really, really exploit and promote your music in the right way. When I say exploit, so these are the kind of things I tell a young artist. Like, read it and don't be impressed by they're going to give me $50,000 as soon as I sign, because we both know it's just a loan.
That's right.
Giving you anything. They're just temporarily putting some money in your pocket that they're going to charge you 10 times.
They're going to charge you and get it back. I always say that, what was that group, TLC, when she broke down, let me just tell you how this whole thing works. And she broke down how much money they received and how much they didn't get out of what was sold. And it's just a classic case. It should be taught in law school. They did a great job on that.
No, I definitely know the war stories of many artists out there, and I hope these young artists will set aside their need to be famous.
Yes.
We always ask artists when they come in, do you want to be famous or do you want to have fortune? Tell us which one, because we want to make you hopefully have some fortune to retire on. But if you just want to be famous, we can call in some people and put you on an award show, and
that's right.
Red carpet, you'll be famous. You'll be broke, but you'll be famous. So we try to encourage them to make that decision early on. And
I had a client once, and my assistant said, this person wants to be famous more than they want to be good. Wow. And that was really deep, because as soon as she said it, I saw that. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm going to just look real quick and see. So someone said, thank you so much for this new feature, AVJ Rocks. Well, thank you, whoever that is. And someone also mentioned Liz Wright, who is a beautiful singer who lived in Georgia. She doesn't anymore, but she came up and her voice is amazing. I forgot to mention her. I want to just thank you so much for giving me a half an hour of your time. I just want to put your website there, because if anybody, I would really highly recommend that if you are in a contract and you need to get out of it, we have Attorney James Walker Jr. here, who has freed people from their contracts. He has lawyers working in 22 states. So no matter what state you're in, he can get to you. If you're in a major market, he has someone who can help you with that. And with that, Attorney Walker, I really appreciate so much you coming on and sharing your expertise with the listeners. And I appreciate it, and take care.
Take care. Thank your listeners. It's an honor to be here. God bless.
Goodbye.